Click the links to join the channel here on subscribe. So first of all, I saw this video, this thing, and it's been just bothering me for a few days. And it's also a slow news day because the Black Panther Wakanda thing came out, and it's not like nobody's saying it's great, but it's also selling well enough to do okay. So it's kind of a weird, it's kind of a weird media thing where it's like nobody's talking about it. The pre-sales weren't that great, but the sales, the actual physical people, like just kind of showed up at the theater to see it. So it's like it's doing okay. I don't think there's no way it's going to do great. Like there's no freaking way. I kind of feel like it's the same with Black Adams, where they go, oh, the opening weekend was really good. It's like, yeah, let's just hold off before you get too excited about that. It's neither one of them look like very good movies to me. Anyway, so first of all, I thought this Jennifer Lawrence thing. Now, this isn't just a case of some person acting like a standard Hollywood idiot, because I think it's a good example of how the narrative is pushed, Trump's arrangement syndrome and the media brainwashing. It also kind of explains the recent election results from 2 nights ago, which I think have people confused because everybody left and right know that the country is in deep poop. And that's not just me saying that. I mean, polls have been saying that left and right. Everybody knows things are off, definitely off course. Most, good Lord, like left or right, if you hear the executive speak, at least the guy before, it's like at least he might not have been your guy, and it might have been an a-hole, but at least you knew he knew what he was doing, cognitively, like he was acting with intent. Like this, you look at this guy and you go like, oh, who's pulling the strings here? Because I really don't think it's this guy. As someone on Twitter goes like, who's running this Twitter? Because like nobody believes Biden has got a cell phone in his hand and is running Twitter. Anyway, so most people have shifted to the right over the past 2 years, like across different groups, various groups. For some magical reason, people have looked at what has happened over the past few years and started shifting to the right, breaking to the right for elections, except single women. They broke to the left. That means they voted to the left this last election. So they saw this current Weimar inflationary period and presumably felt that voting blue was the best way to address that issue. I assume because single women are more susceptible to mental brainwashing and because they don't have the stabilizing influence of a family. They've got to form a pseudo friend group and digital Facebook family, which I know makes me sound like a jerk, don't get me wrong, but we're in some pretty dire straits now. And the elections from a few days ago, wow, that doesn't bode well. So the other issue is that, don't make a 19th Amendment joke, is that single women are a collective. They shouldn't be. There shouldn't be enough of them for that. It shouldn't be like a thing or like whatever. But America is pretty well screwed when the media and feminist ladies magazines have convinced women that being single is stunning and brave. And, as they've done over the past generations. It's like all this stuff is generational brainwashing. So, yeah, to be blunt, once the single women percentage crosses a certain point, I think it's inversely proportional to a stable society. They become voluntary slaves to a machine to be nothing more than debt slave cattle. It's kind of an evolutionary dead end. It's a tragedy beyond my ability to describe it. They're born to work and to die and to never start a family, and it's not their fault. This is done to them because of decades of media propaganda brainwashed them and set the forces in motion to get us where we are now. What the media has done to the West is the biggest psych op in human history, starting in about 1965 with a few different events. They managed to completely destroy a society because people thought that the TV and magazine were harmless. It's like when low trust people come into a high trust environment, you're able to completely decimate them because they had no defenses against it. They just didn't know what they didn't know. They had no idea that the media and such publishing houses were controlled by demons whose only point was to destroy tribalism, nationalism, the family, the church, anything of stability over the past 50, 60 years has been completely decimated. and they did. I mean, they look around you, friend. Look at America 2022 compared to the family structure in 1962. That should make you very angry because this corruption was done to it on purpose. It turned America into nothing more than a commercial zone. And, if I said that 30 or 40 years ago, the same guys who kind of would have got offended about that are absolutely in agreement with me. This Jennifer Lawrence article is a great example of everything that's going on right now. She's very publicly at odds with her family over politics. If you were to tell my great grandmother that this would even be a thing, she would look at you like you had two heads. It's inconceivable to her. It's inconceivable to anyone over a certain age that people would behave like this, as well as me, that anyone would argue with their blood tribe over politics publicly. Behind, in private is one thing for sure, as long as it's like respectful to each other. Because for most of human history, it was always understood that blood is thicker than water. It's like it's just not such a big deal. It's like which one is your favorite cat? The indoor one or the whatever. So I'm not defending or attacking Trump at all. Trump is not Trump. He's a straw man version that the media presented to the left, and on the right, that's a good shot. On the right, he's the same thing. He's also a straw man version that they wanted him to be, but the media brainwashed NPCs into that moving image actually uses up. It makes a larger file size, unfortunately. And on they like both whatever happened to in the old days used to go, yeah, politicians are scumbags. It's like left and right can sit down, smoke a joint, and agree on that. Like everyone was like, oh yeah, that goes without saying. Like yeah, we're arguing about politics, but like we all know the politicians are the best place to put them when they're done is probably just right in prison, left or right. It's like it wasn't that long ago that people were left and right was absolutely in agreement with that. Like, oh yeah, of course, yeah, like we're voting for our guy because he's the best of the worst options, but like we know our guy's a scumbag, and like we all know both sides are scumbags because by definition that's what politicians were, scumbags. But the media brainwashed NPCs into thinking that he was, I'll say, Satan for the sake of the algorithm. I mean, it's kind of a surface level discussion of it. I think I'm going to do another video on this for Odyssey and Bit Chute. But a part of the reason that the brainwashing was effective is because the people who believe the media were already pre-programmed to believe the media. Like you couldn't just spring today's media on people because they'd look at you and be like, "Oh, this is horseshit. These people are clearly biased." I'd be like, people from if you just sprung it on people who weren't familiar with mainstream media, be like, "Oh, who's paying them? Where's the money? Follow the money. Who benefits? Who's who are the holding companies? Who are the umbrella corporations? What's their identity? What's their ideology? What's their bias?" They start asking really reasonable questions, and whenever you're presented with information about something that matters, you start going, "Okay, well, let's pause the information for now and let me look at the source of the information to see what their biases are." And you tell that to people now, you go, "What? Of course it's fair and impartial." How do you know that? I mean, technically, like you're just assuming that, but this is important. So let's start breaking it down. Let's look at the source of the information. It's like, that's probably problematic for some reason. It's like they're saying what I want them to say, so I'm going to agree with them. It's like, buddy, left or right, you can just don't trust any of the media. What happened to investigating primary sources and talking to people about people's experience with those what happened to books? Even in books, you look at the author and go, okay, I'm going to read about this issue. Let's look at the author. What's their bias? Okay, I understand their bias now. So when it refers to that area, I'm going to take it with an extra grain of salt. It's like, I feel like there's a generational shift between people who came up on books and people who came up on the TV, and now it's like the tablet and the cell phone. It never leaves people's hands. You're like, oh, that short attention span theater thing, that is absolutely real, and that's terrifying. It's like if you're not able to explain something to people in like these 15-second bits, you're going to lose the audience. We're today we're going to read Moby Dick, and then we're going to read it again in a few years to make sure we got all the stuff we missed. So the idea that the media would say a politician is good or bad, and then people believe it, and then they alienate their own family over that, tells me that that nation is not going to be a nation for long. 20 years ago, the left knew the media was a corporate whore, but in 20 years, they were able to be completely subverted and corrupted. It's the power of 24/7 media brainwashing. And like I can hear her say this in that Tick, California voice. So Lawrence is publicly talking to an interviewer about her private family affairs. That blows my mind enough for me to do this video, which is not going to be a real big click through video, because like she's not an important person, so she's not going to get a lot of clicks. But I think what is happening with her is an example, is the tip of the iceberg for what's happening with a lot of women. And I single out women because the like I said, they broke left for the elections 2 days ago. So what she's doing is disrespecting her family because globalist propaganda CNN told her that Trump is somehow worse than Obama, Clinton, Bush, or whoever. Like taking Obama, for example, and comparing him with Trump, like, would you like to objectively, let's put all our emotion aside and compare Obama to Trump? And they would not like that comparison. Okay. Can we agree that they're both scumbags? Now, a few decades ago, you'd sit down with people and go, oh, yeah, of course. That goes without saying, buddy. My politician, your politician, of course they're all scumbags. Now, who's the least scummy? And you look at Obama and Trump's like, brother, they're both scumbags. Like, to get worked up about either one of them, man, it's time to relax. Do you ever stop to consider that the media is using you as a useful idiot? Maybe the politicians are all bad. Maybe they're not really in charge at all. If you look at the power to manipulate NPCs, CNN is more powerful than any president on earth. 50 years ago, I think a reporter would have been shocked by Lawrence disrespecting her family. Like he would think she was like a borderline personality disorder, which she might be, or she was having something was not clicking with her because the societal conditioning to not go against the family was so strong pretty much in every family. It's just not something you ever did. He might even have hinted that, selling out your blood family tribe kind of makes you look like a sociopathic NPC. And I don't know if that is the case or just someone who is deeply, deeply brainwashed through a lifetime. And she's in Hollywood too. It's got to be weird for them. But anyway, so look at how deep in 1984 levels we are right now. The idiot box, known as the TV, or the next generation was the computer, and now it's the cell phone, told her for 4 years that Blonde Man was bad. Did she stop to do her own research or just parrot information? I mean, that's the stimulus response thing. You hear something, you hear it long enough, often enough, you just start parroting it. And you got to like just pause that and go, wait a minute, let's have some cognition between the stimulus and the response. How do I know what I know? Because it seems like a lot of people on both sides, the left and the right, they just parrot information. We gotta support the troops 10,000 miles away. That's like kind of a right wing thing. Just like vaguely support the military. Or it used to be. The right wing is changing pretty rapidly too, and do something much more based. And like years ago, I would ask them like, "Oh, so do we need to be at war 10,000 miles away in a foreign country?" Or no, I'm sorry, it's not even a declared war because that's an act of Congress. But do we need to be at conflict 10,000 miles away? And I'd ask the right that, and they'd kind of either they get angry or they'd start thinking, we'd start having the discussion. We're like, oh, wait, why are we there? Yeah, that's kind of a good question to ask before we spend human American life 10,000 miles away. It's like, it's a real good question to ask. Like, just because a group of people are saying something, you don't need to repeat it without going, wait a minute, why are we saying this? Let me show me the work, show me the issue, rule, analysis, conclusion. So somewhere in the past few decades, the government schools must have stopped teaching kids how to think instead of what to think. They taught them to trust the media and government, which obviously blows my mind. Which is funny because even like back in the day, I would have been right libertarian. But now in some regards, I'm pretty far left liberal. Like a liberal was just one who wasn't afraid of asking questions, and as it turns out now, there's a lot of people who are afraid of asking questions. I mean, the self-censorship it's really off the hook, and it helps that I know who's listening to this, we have this disagreeable personality trait. And it's good to have that. It's good to have somebody who's the devil's advocate. And I say we because, I talked to you in the comments. I know who you are in that regard. So if I could talk to her, I would ask her why she believes what she believes. What was her source for the information? Was her source honest, fair, and impartial? Or was it biased with an agenda? Do you know something, or you know something because CNN, MSNBC, and Cosmo told you it? It's like if you look at the media, You go, oh, so who owns the media? What's the holding company? Who owns the outstanding shares? Who's the board? Who's the executive? All that kind of crap. Like, what are their biases? I want to know who's holding all the mainstream media. There's like a dozen. Let's look at the dozen top media companies. Go, oh, they're actually held by a very small group of people. Oh, so like, who are they tied in with? What's their bias? Oh, you don't need to ask those questions. Um, yeah, you don't need it. You don't need a gun. Okay, you don't need an AR. You need two, and a lot of other stuff too. So the idea that anyone would get worked up over Trump, either for or against, means that that person needs to wonder if they've been brainwashed. Another day, another psyop. You should not be influenced by globalist media and government propaganda schools. Blood is always thicker than water, and the media and government use brainwashing to destroy the family by lowering in group preferences. Plus, you know, they're lizard people. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. Just join the subscribe star, and I will see you guys all in the next episode.